Meeting of the Education and Culture Committee, and Councilor Garvin, would you offer the...
Yes, ma'am. Father in heaven, creator of all things, we thank you for our well-being, our health, and we thank you for this opportunity to work with this committee, the most important committee of our Cherokee Nation. We thank you that we're concerned about our young people and we work so hard to make it easy for them. Father, I pray for our nation, this difficult time with the floods and tornadoes. We just pray that you would strengthen those people and be with them, give them care. Father, I pray that you'd forgive us for our sins. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Next is roll call.
Julia Coates.
Here.
Don Garvin.
Honey.
Bill England. Bill John Baker.
Here.
Jack Baker.
Here.
Harley Buzzard.
Here.
Bradley Cobb.
Oh, honey.
Joe Crittenden.
Here.
Jody Fishinghawk. Meredith Fraley. Here. Janelle Fulbright. Chuck Hoskin Jr. China Glory Jordan.
Present.
Curtis Snell. Chris Soap.
Here.
David Thornton. Tara Callan Watts.
Honey.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you. We are beginning late with this meeting, and we do have a very substantive issue for discussion, and I have asked the speaker if it would be all right to run over into the Rules Committee time a little bit, and she has very graciously agreed that that would be fine. But we have also had, the committee chairs have received some guidelines from the speaker and from Mr. Hembry about the conduct of meetings, some suggested guidelines, and I'm going to implement those today. And what they say is that each person shall have, each counselor shall have a maximum of 10 minutes to speak. They do not have to use that all in one time. They can speak several times, but we will hear from others who have not spoken before any one person is allowed to speak for a second time. So I'm going to implement those guidelines today for this meeting in the hopes that we can move through this in an orderly and timely fashion. So we have a resolution in front of us, and I'm going to ask Ms. Knight, our group leader from Education, to begin to speak to us about the resolution and the charter school proposal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Honorable Committee, for entertaining this today. We do think this is a very good opportunity for us, and thank you for setting up a special meeting to discuss it. I'm going to walk through, for discussion purposes, this summary document that I've placed on top of the entire charter proposal, and that will help us summarize, some of the issues and discussions. And then if there's anything you would like to ask, outside of that or in addition to that, of course we're welcome that. I'd like to quickly introduce who I've got here with me today. Dr. Neil Morton is here with us, Deputy Group Leader Corey Bunch, the Finance Manager Jennifer Pigeon, who knows everything and keeps us all in line, Superintendent of Sequoia Rita Bunch, the Principal of our elementary Holly Davis. And then Dr. Gloria Sly is with us, and she is our Government Relations Officer and has researched and prepared this proposal for our discussion today. So thank you all for being here, and they'll be able to answer any question we throw at them, I think, today. The last legislative session of the Oklahoma Legislature, language was added to the charter school authorization, allowing for us, the Cherokee Nation, to apply for a charter school. And the charter school, you can see the language at the top of my summary page, must be for the purposes of demonstrating native language immersion instruction and must be located within our former reservation or treaty boundaries. Of course, that is a very targeted proposal, and it was intended to be so that tribes could, particularly the Cherokee Nation, could demonstrate how native language immersion could happen and be publicly funded by the state of Oklahoma. The option went into law in November last year, but the proposal process was not outlined to us until this spring. Obviously, the first opportunity for us to take advantage of this would be coming the next school year, which would start the year August the 1st. If we choose to exercise the option, we would need to get the package to the state of Oklahoma by June the 30th. So that's the reason this special meeting was needed. If we're going to consider it this year, is to take advantage of it this month. So what I've proposed or outlined here are what we consider a list of benefits, a list of challenges and opportunities, and how you view each one might determine what side of the house you think that belongs on. Some of the challenges I also view as potential benefits to our students. So I'll run through those very quickly. First of all, one of the key benefits, of course, is accessing state appropriations for our students. And we ended this year with an enrollment of pre-K through 8th grade of 135 students. We already have pre-enrollment for next year of 145 students for those grades. So using those numbers and estimating what we would be at full capacity, we estimate about 160 students at full capacity for pre-K through 8th grade. That provides a range of funding we would expect of about $1.1 million to $1.3 million in direct state appropriations per child. And that includes an amount weighted for gifted and talented and some of the other special programs that would come along with. Accreditation would require us to become accredited for the elementary. We are presently already accredited for 7th and 8th grade, along with Sequoia High School. We already meet the requirements for accreditation, and so we don't think that there would be much additional that would be required there. We already follow the accreditation checklist. To go into a charter would provide standardization from a certain aspect, and the next 3 items deal with consistency with the public school system here in Oklahoma. There would be learning standards that everyone knows what they are because we would be required to follow Oklahoma Pass Objectives and all the other incoming Common Core standards that everyone else is going to have to be compliant with. The professional development standards of the state of Oklahoma would apply to us. Presently, they've been waived for a period of time, but should they come back for all the public schools, we would be required to do those. There would be ease of transition for our students in and out of our elementary. If they choose to enroll with a public school, the transition would be easier because we would be holding to the same standards as public schools in Oklahoma. We would hope by doing this to gain experience, and we think it's a really good opportunity for us to do that, gain experience in a charter school setting, so that if we ever wanted to apply this model in other places, we would already have the experience to do so. We would also become eligible for federal grants that are available to local public school systems that we're not eligible for now because we're a private school. So that would open up a new area of opportunity for us to apply for those competitive grants. There would be more transparency available for both our parents and the public as to how our students are doing, how we're meeting those standards and so forth, because our test scores along with everyone else's would become public. So not only would we have those standards applying those tests, but the information in terms of how well we're doing would be out there for the public to see under a charter model. And then we already have gained the capacity. We've built a team of education people, experienced educators that have a lot of experience in the public school arena. They know what the requirements are. They've been meeting those requirements, and they would bring that experience to us to make this happen. So, to get over into some of the challenges, and, we have to go into things like this with our eyes completely open because we would have to change the way we do business in a couple of areas, and I'll go through those just quickly. First of all, we would not be able to limit our enrollment based on citizenship, and this is a high discussion item. We've discussed it before with regard to our elementary and Sequoia High School. We would no longer be able to limit our enrollment to Cherokee citizens. We would, however, and we've proposed it in the proposal, continuing students would not have to reapply, for instance. We could implement, and we've proposed to, Cherokee language requirements for entering students that would enter into the system later. And in our proposal, we say post-kindergarten. If they enter later than kindergarten, is to have a requirement for some level of Cherokee proficiency. And that's just come from experience. We've had some students that have tried to enter the elementary later, and they're just not successful because they've not entered at the earlier grades and come up in Cherokee proficiency along with the rest of the school. So we would implement some level of Cherokee proficiency for entering students later in later grades. The other thing is we would be sure to communicate to any enrolling parents and students that enrollment in the elementary would not mean automatic eligibility for Sequoia High School, because Sequoia High School grades 9 through 12 would still be a BIE school. We would still be required to have Indian students eligible for that school, along with children of employees. So those requirements would remain the same. We would have to communicate that very clearly to any parents seeking to enroll their students in our school, so that there's no unrealistic expectations there. We would have to do more paperwork than we're currently doing to document what we're doing in special ed. We are meeting the requirements for special education in our current elementary. We have a special education teacher, meet those requirements, but there is specific documentation that you must complete for the state in regard to what you're doing for special ed. So we would begin doing that. We would need to implement some additional gifted and talented activities that we're not currently doing, but we think would already be something we would want to do anyway, is to implement that programming for the gifted and talented. And then there are the testing requirements. We would comply with standardized testing for 3rd and 5th grade, and all of these tests would be conducted in English because there's not presently an option to have them done in Cherokee. Now, we would continue to seek to have them, if we can translate those tests into Cherokee and apply them in Cherokee, we would prefer to do that. However, we've been doing some research with some second language schools. There's a Zaro school in Tulsa that's a Spanish school, and they do their testing in English as well, and they perform quite well, even taking the test in English. We've been doing some testing beginning with the 5th grade and working our way down, and we're applying those tests in English. All of our students are at least average, even in English testing, and most of them are testing as gifted. So we really feel confident that those students are going to meet the challenge and in fact be benefited by being bilingual. We'll have a bit less flexibility. Right now, we're not required to have certified staff at all times in the classroom, although we do have a certified staff member assigned to each classroom. People get sick, things happen, someone's not there one day. We would not have the flexibility under a charter model to not have certified staff coverage in each classroom. So little things like that we would have to meet that we're not currently bound to. But we don't think those things would be insurmountable. We would have to participate in the WAVE system, which is a statistics system for the state of Oklahoma that tracks every student, and wherever that student goes, that student is tracked, and we think that would probably be beneficial to our students to participate in that system. And then the finance system for the Oklahoma State education system. So all of our expenses related to these funds, not our entire budget, but only these funds would have to be recorded in that system. And then there is a general perception sometimes that from public schools that charter schools are negative. And one thing I would say to that is that these students are presently not counted in anyone's enrollment. So we're not recruiting students away from public school. We're not taking away resources from public school. It's simply accessing resources for these students that are in our school already. So that's how I would respond to that. So overall, we've outlined what we think would benefit our students, what we think some of the challenges would be, and we truly think that the benefits far outweigh the additional things we would need to do in order to gain those benefits. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have on the proposal.
I appreciate your acknowledgement of the Cherokee preference issues. So I'm going to look for creative solutions to kind of filter out some of the wannabe stuff that might occur under that. just in case. I mean, it's at minimal risk, but I appreciate you acknowledging that when we've had earlier discussions outside the room. On the ninth grade transition logistics, I guess you said that that would be a contract up front that they would have to acknowledge if they were non-Indian, that they would not be able to continue after the ninth grade, right?
That would be my preference, and I've discussed that with Holly, is having the parents sign an acknowledgement acknowledging that if they are not eligible presently for Sequoia High School, they would not become eligible by participating in the elementary, so that they would have to find another option at ninth grade.
Okay, and one last question. I applaud the efforts to do college prep curriculum and that you're going to streamline the whole deal in that there would be requirements, college prep requirements for math and science in particular, and especially these younger kids leading into the high school experience. And I look forward to that being strengthened over time, and thank you for acknowledging that in our earlier conversation. And that's it. Thank you, Chairman.
Counselor Soap.
Yeah, Melanie, I've got two questions. One, what's the expected enrollment in this charter school?
Well, presently, as I said, we ended this school year with 135, and that's pre-K through 8. As you know, we haven't started a 6th grade yet, so the pre-enrollment for next year is 145, and we would estimate up to 160 at full capacity. And of course, we would be limited by our facility currently, so.
Okay. And then the other question is, how do you, we talked about enrollment, and how do you select children for enrollment? Because if they select themselves basically through the application process, how does it actually work at a charter school? I'm not familiar with that. I know that when you hear about really successful charter schools, you know that there is a lot of competition for those slots, and so there are, I guess Councilor Watts said, creative ways as to how you determine that. But what are some of the ways? Because I know from some background from what the Hawaiians went through, they had some similar challenges with what your first item was, and so that's something that. How do you select the kids?
Well, first of all, the continuing students would get the first priority. So out of a potential of 160 slots, 135 of them, obviously could be taken right away. Then the second is what grade a student may be entering. For example, if they're entering 2nd grade and they speak 0 Cherokee, we would have a Cherokee proficiency requirement. Because we want to ensure success of that student.
What's the legal authority there for you to establish that?
It would be by way of this application. Should this application be approved, we've built that into the application.
And everybody recognizes that as that's just part of the charter school process.
And then beyond those preferences, once you've satisfied those, then it becomes a lottery for those slots. So the students have to have equal access.
Is that it, Counselor Soap?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Counselor Fraley.
Madam Chair, I know we're in discussion, but I move for approval.
I will second.
Okay. Thank you. We did overlook that. Did you have a comment also, or was that it?
Not this time.
Okay. Counselor Garvin.
Yes, I have a couple of questions. I know the state's real hard up for money, and this is going to be very competitive. What's our chances? Are there going to be a lot of applications? Probably not really answer that, but...
I can't say for certain, but in reading this language, it's pretty narrow. It's only a tribe that operates a Bureau of Indian Affairs high school, and I don't know of any other tribes that do other than the Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma.
We're not competing with just the churches and those.
No, this is a special charter authority, so, and it's my understanding, I didn't delineate the process, but The way that the language is structured, the federally recognized tribe, meaning the Cherokee Nation, is a sponsoring entity. So we sponsor our own application. So we approve our own application. So once it's approved and it goes forward, there's not another, if I understand it correctly, there's not another approval process, but there is a compliance check by the state to make sure that everything that's required is part of the proposal that's been approved.
Did our own elected leaders in this area push this through the Senate,
We did have assistance from many state legislators on that.
mostly in this area?
I can't recall who all partnered on putting it forward, but, and with the support for charter schools now in the state, we really think that's something that's a movement that's been occurring and will continue to occur under this new administration, so.
I see as a big problem testing, I think it's third grade. And I remember when I was in the third grade, we had some 18 and 19-year-old people sitting there because they couldn't pass the test. And it's not a good idea. So I know that one party is pushing that statewide, and I'd like to see it changed, but for right now, I guess we'll have to live with it.
Yeah, that is an issue, this business of you can't pass someone unless they meet some of those requirements now, so.
You'll get overloaded with older people in those lower grades. Thank you.
Counselor Buzzard?
I think my question's been answered, Melody, but I had concerns about the Cherokee preference on the thing too. And it's just like, there's going to be some competition for this school once it gets established. And that's my concern is keeping the Cherokees in there. It sounds like you have a plan that you can do that with, non-discrimination is one of it. So that's my concern about it. It sounds to me like you've worked around it so far. We have other tribes that's in the area that actually go to Sequoia, and so that's my concern, is Cherokees in those classes.
And there is potential for that.
Yes.
And we anticipate, at least a few students that might not be Cherokee that involve themselves in the school. The fact that it's language immersion in Cherokee, the fact that non-Indian students wouldn't be able to continue into the high school, and that they have to start in pre-K or kindergarten in order to really get a foot in the door. I think those things, when combined, we would really see very few students outside of Cherokee citizens that would be interested.
And I think it's going to be competitive because the reputation's out, that Sequoia is school of choice now, so we're going to be facing some of this stuff. But that's my concerns about it.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any other questions? Counselor Jordan?
Yes, Melanie, I seem to recall in some of the information that you gave us that you had polled the present students or the present parents of students in the immersion program regarding moving to a charter school, but I don't guess I ever saw the results of that poll.
I know that we've had parent meetings where this has been discussed. I don't know if we specifically polled, but let me defer that one to Holly.
We actually have had parent meetings. I'm kind of new to this too, so it's been a learning experience for me. And we immediately started talking charter school after I came. And so I immediately started with my parent meetings, just introducing the idea. And because we decided if we didn't have the support of parents, it probably wouldn't be even something we'd want to look into. But I actually touched base with a few of them yesterday just to make sure we were all on the same page. And we didn't take a formal vote, but the parents are very supportive of charter school.
And then also I understand if we go to this program, will we be graded much like the public schools are going to be graded? I understand that now there's going to be a grade given to each school based on their kids' ability to achieve success in the standardized test. Are we going to get such a grade like that? And it'll be a public, will be reviewed by the public, whether we made an A or an F or a C or a B.
Let me defer. I'm aware of the law. I'm not sure about the law's applicability to charters versus the general public school system. Corey, do you know?
That's correct. I do believe that we would fall under that, just like all the other public schools will be, and they'll all be assigned a grade based on the testing.
I think so. A part I do like about this is that our children will be taking the standardized test, so if they do transition into another institution, they will have been exposed to the English language and they will have been taking the standardized test, and it should be an easier transition. And I'm still on the bubble on how I want to vote on this, so I'd like to ask you a few more questions if I could. I know that before, I remember last year, there was quite a discussion by this group about only Cherokee students being allowed to go to the immersion program, which I at the time felt like if we already had children of other tribes in the program, that we should let them continue in the program. And I see that some people appear to have changed their tune regarding the no discrimination clause, but I'm kind of concerned that we're talking about creative ways of selecting our students. And when I see something that says no discrimination, I take it for no discrimination. So we've talked about the higher grades, how we might ask them to be able to achieve some proficiency in the Cherokee language. Well, I want to ask you, how will you select your pre-K class, which is your new kids coming into the school, which will be a whole new class? How are we going to select those young children? Will that be by lottery only? So everyone that applies to this school will receive a number, every child will receive a number, and I assume then that number is pulled in a lottery fashion. I think that's what I heard you saying, but I want to make sure that we're not going to get into some sort of lawsuit where Johnny Native and Johnny Non-Native both apply, and Johnny Native gets in, Johnny Non-Native don't get in, and the parents feel like they've been discriminated against. I don't want to see us right off the bat get into a lawsuit where we have discriminated, but we've taken over $1 million of Oklahoma's money for our school system. So can you walk me through how you plan to select your pre-K class once this is, if we're successful in this endeavor, we take their money, we become non-discriminatory in the selection of our children for this school. How do you propose to select the pre-K class?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Counselor. And certainly I want to make the assurance that if we go this route, we will be compliant with all of the requirements that come along with it, just like every other grant that we operate at the nation. And that's the way I see this, is more of a grant. There would be strings attached to those funds if we choose to accept them. For the pre-K class, all of the additional preferences I talked about apply to upper grades. For the pre-K class, I can see no other, no preferences being applied because any child would be eligible. So in that case, for those slots, they would all be by lottery. And I would ask Dr. Sly to correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think they would all have to be by lottery for those slots.
Well, one note there. Siblings, we have put in the proposal, siblings of current students will be given preference. But in a 3-year-old classroom, if we have more than, say, a classroom will hold 20 students, then if we have more than 20 students, we go to lottery based on that. So, and for the grades like this, first, second grade, if they're Cherokee speakers and they're proficient in Cherokee, and we have a slot or 2 open and 5 applicants for that slot, then it goes to lottery immediately.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you. I neglected to mention the siblings. Did you have something?
I mean, also, I think it would be great if we had a high demand for the pre-K classes,
And I don't see anything that would keep us from adding an additional class to meet accreditation standards, and picking up extra classes just like public schools would do. If they get a large enrollment, then they can split the class and then increase their capacity.
You've got 5 more minutes, yes.
I think Counselor Garvin asked this question, and I wanted to expand on it a little bit. You said we're the only one that we know of in this category, this special category, to set up a charter school. Has money been set aside from public education money for this special charter school?
No, the charter school bill wasn't an appropriation act, it was an authorization. So this would be funded in the same way that every other charter in the state would be funded.
So will we be perceived as competing with public education money?
I don't know that
Are we going
we,
to be taking from the public education
it is a
fund?
perception. I don't know how that perception ties to reality in the same way that we would be starting a new school from scratch. Because these students haven't been accessing any of the state appropriations for their education. And we're not recruiting enrollment away from public schools to do that. We're not taking a subset of the public school enrollment for that.
And if we receive this 1.1 to 1.3 million for pre-K through 8th grade, or will there be a need for additional money to come from our institution to fund the school?
Yes.
What is the total cost of 165 students, 160, I'm sorry, I think you said optimal number was 160? What is the total cost for a pre-K through 8th grade current program like we have for 160 students?
What I can relate to on that question is our current budget. We have a current budget for pre-K through 5th and 7th and 8th. And those budgets combined are a little over $2.7 million. So if that gives you any point of reference, the $2.7 million would relate very closely to the $1.1 million I've put at the bottom of this scale.
Okay. Okay, I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Are there other questions? Okay, then we have a motion in front of us to adopt this resolution, and a second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the resolution passes. Thank you. And we have run over only 5 minutes into your time, Madam Speaker, so I think that's a very good job for this particular issue.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Okay, 5 minutes.